Rome fell. Every empire before it followed the same pattern. Spend beyond your means, hollow out the coinage, mint the shortfall until the coins are copper wearing a silver mask. The Roman denarius had been near pure silver in the 1st century. By the time the Western Empire collapsed, it contained roughly 5% of that original silver content. That's not a tragedy. That's a template. Empires get expensive. Wars never end. When the treasury runs dry, there is always one move that requires no courage. Shave the coin, dilute the metal, print the gap away. Rome did it. The Carolingians did it. Every medieval kingdom in Western Europe did some version of it. Except one, for roughly 7 centuries, longer than the United States, has existed. Longer than the entire lifespan of the Western Roman Empire, one coin held its weight, its purity, and its credibility from the coast of England to the markets of Baghdad. The Byzantine solidus. Not because Byzantium was lucky, not because it faced no pressure, because someone built something deliberately, and then, generation after generation, paid the political cost of defending it. Pick the coin up in your mind. 4.5 grams, about the diameter of a modern dime. No serial number, no government guarantee, just gold minus 23 carats, near pure, consistent to within fractions of a gram across 7 centuries of minting. Emperor Constantine I introduced it around 312 AD, standardized at 72 coins per Roman pound of gold, a deliberate answer to decades of monetary collapse. Silver coins so debased they were effectively bronze. Inflation so severe that entire provinces had retreated into barter. Constantine's response was structurally radical and ideologically simple. Stop lying about the metal. Set a weight, set a purity. Hold it there. Enforce it with the full machinery of the imperial state. What followed was something no monetary system at that scale had ever achieved: a coin the entire known world accepted on sight, without verification, without weighing, without question. Not just inside Byzantine territory, everywhere, excavated from Scandinavian soil, recovered from coin hoards across the Russian steppe, documented in the archaeological record of Sri Lanka. Arab rulers copied the solidus design nearly exactly when minting their own gold, because their merchants demanded something the world would accept, without question. The first Umayyad gold dinar, issued in 697 AD, was structurally a solidus, with Arabic script in place of the emperor's portrait. Your rivals are copying your currency because their own trade networks demand it. That is not monetary success. That is reserve currency status, the leverage that determines who sets the terms of global commerce for generations. So how was it built? 3 structural pillars, each holding the others up. The first was most foundational. The emperor held an absolute monopoly on gold minting. No competing no feudal lords striking their own coins, no bishops, no city-states, no regional commanders with access to mint facilities. One standard, one reputation to protect. Counterfeiting was punished with amputation of the minting hand, not about cruelty, but about what the solidus represented: sovereign credibility, rendered physical. You did not fake it. The system enforced that, without exception. Compare this to medieval Western Europe. Hundreds of competing mints, inconsistent metal content, coins that merchants had to physically weigh and test before accepting. A Persian trader who had never set foot in Constantinople knew what a solidus weighed without scales, because it had always been that weight. That frictionless trust had enormous commercial value in reduced transaction costs alone, before counting the trade volume it generated. The second pillar was fiscal discipline, imperfect, but real in a way that had no equivalent among the empire's contemporaries. Emperor Basil II ruled from 976 to 1025, spending nearly his entire reign at war. The Bulgarians, the Fatimid Caliphate, internal aristocratic revolts, border threats across 4 fronts. He died leaving a treasury reserve of 14.4 million numismata, roughly 200,000 pounds of gold, equivalent to 2 full years of annual revenue. An empire that fought continuously for 5 decades and still ended with a surplus. The mechanism was taxation that functioned: land surveys, updated tax registers, professional collectors operating within a bureaucratic system the empire had inherited from Rome and never dismantled. Basil's Allelingian law of 1002 made large estate owners liable for unpaid taxes of their poorer neighbors. The aristocracy despised it. They reversed it the moment he was in the ground. The state collected what it was owed. It financed itself through taxation, rather than printing the shortfall. That distinction, tax versus debase, sounds like a technical preference. It is not. Taxation is painful. It generates enemies in the most powerful rooms in the palace. Debasement is invisible. No confrontation required. No enemies made. It lets everyone pretend the problem isn't happening until the damage is past. Reversal. Choosing taxation over debasement demands political courage. Byzantine emperors, at their strongest, made that choice. Their weaker successors did not. The third pillar was trade, and it created the most powerful incentive structure of all. Constantinople sat at the intersection of every major medieval trade corridor: the Silk Road, Egyptian grain routes, the Russian steppe networks, the Black Sea maritime lanes. Every merchant passing through the Bosphorus needed a currency. The solidus was that currency. The customs duties on that traffic were a significant portion of imperial revenue. If the solidus was debased, merchants lost confidence, trade contracted, and the empire faced a structural revenue problem it couldn't solve the same way twice. The system was self-reinforcing. Stability was profitable. Debasement would cost more in lost trade income than it could generate in short-term relief. That calculus held as long as someone was doing the math, and doing the math requires something harder than intelligence. It requires patience, the willingness to accept political pain today in exchange for structural integrity tomorrow. Patience is always the first casualty when an empire starts running out of options. The cracks appeared quietly, not from invasion, not from catastrophe, from the inside. In the calculations of emperors who had run out of better solutions, Michael IV came to power in 1034. Before becoming emperor, he had been a money changer. He understood coinage better than almost anyone in the palace. He began debasing it. The first reductions were marginal, a few carats removed, barely detectable, the kind of change that could be rationalized as a temporary measure under unusual fiscal pressure. It never eased. By the 1040s under Constantine IX, the coin had slipped to 21 caratsa, from 23, but still defensible. By Constantine X in the 1060s, 18 carats. By Romano IV, who lost at Manzikert in 1071, 16 carats. By Michael VII, 14. By Nikephoros III in 1081, 8 carats. From 23 carats to 8 carats in roughly 40 years. 7 centuries of monetary credibility, for decades to destroy it. The speed is the point. The mechanism is the part that should stay with you. None of this happened because Byzantium was invaded. No external force compelled these emperors to shave the coin. Each debasement was a political choice. A military emergency, a treasury hole, a court faction that needed paying off. Each one told himself the reduction was modest, contained, temporary. None of them were. When the solidus lost its gold, it did not simply lose purchasing power. It lost the reason foreign merchants accepted it. It lost the contract language denominating trade agreements across 3 continents for 6 centuries. It lost the trust premium, the invisible surcharge that came from being the one currency no one questioned. And into that vacuum moved the Venetians. Italian city-states had operated as trading partners within the Byzantine system for generations. Now, with the nomisma unreliable, they became indispensable, holding credit lines, controlling trade routes, extracting privileges that carved Byzantine commerce into Italian possession. The empire that had issued the world's reserve currency for 7 centuries was now dependent on foreign merchants for its own commercial operation. Alexios I Komnenos came to power in 1081 with an empty treasury, a debased coinage, and 6 simultaneous versions of the nomisma in circulation, each worth a different amount. None trusted. His reform of 1092 introduced the Hyperpyrean new gold coin, roughly 85% purity, stable weight, enforced. He taxed the church, taxed the aristocracy, rebuilt the fiscal machinery. By the early 12th century, the new coin functioned, the structure was repaired, the credibility was not. The Venetians were embedded. The trade routes, redirected. The geopolitical leverage, the ability to denominate contracts, project authority through monetary dominance, gone. A structural fix can restore a system. It cannot restore what made the world trust it. The Byzantine state ran a single issuer with strict accountability. Modern financial architecture operates through an expanding web of derivatives, shadow banking, and off-balance sheet structures where no single entity bears the full cost of failure. Byzantium treated surplus budgeting as the baseline. Today, structural deficit is not a crisis response. It is the default assumption from which all policy is measured. The solidus maintained its credibility because the empire had a commercial incentive to protect it. Today, reserve currency status is weaponized sanctions, frozen reserves, exclusion from settlement systems. The de-dollarization pressures building globally are the same response the Arab traders made. When they stopped trusting Byzantine coin, Byzantium began debasing not to survive catastrophe, but to paper over political failures that could have been addressed through taxation. Today, quantitative easing moved from emergency instrument to standing toolkit. Emergency becomes normal. Temporary becomes permanent. That normalization is precisely where Byzantium was in the 1040s. One emperor after another convincing himself the reduction was modest, manageable, reversible. Three things, stated plainly. Institutional design outlasts ideology. Byzantium was not a free market. It was an autocracy with state-controlled minting, aggressive taxation, and managed trade. None of that is a template, but the underlying principle that monetary systems require consistent structural enforcement and cannot survive on goodwill alone is mechanical. The machine works when someone maintains it. When maintenance stops, the decay begins. Monetary credibility compounds, and so does its destruction. Every decade the solidus held, it became more trusted, more embedded, more valuable. 7 centuries to build, less than a generation of political cowardice to make the damage irreversible. Debasement is always political, never purely economic. Every reduction in the numisma's gold content was driven by a political problem, a crisis, a faction, a treasury hole, a choice to solve today's problem by stealing from tomorrow's credibility. The economics followed the politics they always do. Come back to the coin. 4.5 grams. Near pure gold, no guarantee. Only the accumulated weight of centuries of consistent behavior. The solidus outlasted the Western Roman Empire by nearly 1,000 years. It outlasted the Carolingian Empire, the Umayyad, the Viking Age. It outlasted kingdoms that didn't yet exist when Constantine first struck it. What it could not outlast was its own rulers losing the will to defend it. If the Byzantines, no computers, no central banks, no economic theory, maintained monetary discipline for 7 centuries, what does it say about us that we have made debasement routine? Not emergency response, not last resort. Routine. The solidus is gone. The mechanism that destroyed it is still running.